you're having a great day. I want to thank you so much for joining us and spending part of the day right here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, the father-son team, and the financial advisors behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about Ralph and Tim, the entire team, on the website. That is welcomehomefp.com. You can also give a call if you want to schedule a second opinion or a first opinion on your financial outlook, your retirement plan as it stands. Get that retirement roadmap drawn up for you. The number is 804-635-3550. Once again, 804-635-3550, or online, like I said, welcomehomefp.com. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined, as I am every show, with the Shorts, Ralph and Tim. Got to be with you guys again. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
How are you?
Doing very well. Appreciate you guys asking, and appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to spend with the listeners and give them a little bit of insight as they get closer and closer to hopefully retiring. Again, it's the name of the show is we all aspire to retire, and you guys have been helping people here in the Richmond area and beyond, retire and stay retired. So I appreciate the time. Let's go ahead and jump into something here that, Ralph, I know he's not one of your favorites necessarily, but Tony Robbins, personal finance personality, Tony Robbins, he said you need this investment in your portfolio, and he's talking about bonds. He calls them, quote, the foundation of a mind-blowing portfolio that works in all economic climates. What are your thoughts on what he said there? Is there a place for bonds in today's retirement plan? And if so, how should a retiree go about utilizing them?
Well, apparently it's mind-blowing, according to him.
It's a strong statement,
very interesting how that all works out. I mean, you need to be diversified, and I think a lot of people realize that, but diversification also means different things to different people. I think there's alternative to bonds that perform better. I mean, if we look at the year of 2022, which was fairly recent, some bonds and some fixed income actually perform worse than the equity side of the market. And, it's usually a teeter-totter or a seesaw, however you want to label it. And, if bonds are going up, equity's down, and vice versa. Not everything's always going to be the same. But when you take a look at that, if you're thinking that the bonds are going to be safe or the safer investment, well, that kind of proves that that's not necessarily true all the time. So I think there's some alternatives to take a look out there. And if you're trying to get some additional income out of your portfolio, there's other strategies that we can use. But yeah, I know that Mr. Tony Robbins isn't one of my father's favorite folks.
Well, what I would say, I've read all of his books and stuff, and he's a great motivational speaker. And I'm not going to argue with anybody that says he can walk across hot coals or convince other people to do it. So he's got some type of persuasion there. But
I think we should try that one time. Maybe even on the radio.
Right. All you would hear is ouch, ouch, ouch. But anyway, I would say to most people, you need to understand one thing. You need to understand where you're getting advice from. Are they qualified? Are they fiduciaries? Or they just say they are? Those are some things I would warn people about, taking all the information off the internet or whatever as gospel. But I always tell people there is no one perfect investment. If there was, we wouldn't need anybody else to tell us what to do. We'd all go out and buy that CD, or we'd go out and buy that stock or whatever. I mean, everybody thought that Tesla was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and all of a sudden it went down, and now everybody doesn't like it. Now it's going back up. So there is no one perfect investment. You have to figure out what your goal is financially, what your goals are for your lifestyle, and then kind of make adjustments. And once you make that determination, what it is that you want to do, what your diversification is, that doesn't mean it's set in stone for the rest of your life, because your life is going to change a little bit. There's always going to be changes. The older you get, your health might deteriorate. I know, Chris, you don't understand that because you're such a young buck, but
don't drop to my knees. Yeah.
Eventually your health will go down. You might have more costs and expenses. What happens if your children or grandchildren lose their job and they have to come and live with you? That's something that you probably didn't anticipate in your retirement years, but it could happen. I mean, back in the 80s, it was more prevalent back then because of all the economic turmoil we have. Now, I know everybody thinks that we have a lot of turmoil today, but over the years, over the decades, we always faced changes that we have to adjust to. So, like I say, there is no one perfect investment, but if you're looking at just bonds to do maybe your income strategy of your investments, there might be other things out there that might help you grow your money without losing any when the stock market goes down. Would you not agree, Tim?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, there, once again, there is no perfect investment, right? It's never a one size fits all thing. And if there was something perfect, Chris, you would have it. I would have it. Dad would have it. Everybody else on God's green earth would have it.
Right.
Right. So, stop chasing the perfect investment. What you got to focus on is, what you're trying to accomplish with your money, what you're going to need and what you want to, because, yes, we have needs, right? We've got our expenses because we've said this multiple times, and Chris, you're probably tired of us saying this, but your expenses don't stop when you retire.
They don't. Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that you've got that covered. But also, retirement's about what you want to do at this point too. So you also have to factor in not just what you need, but also what you want. And I think a lot of people kind of struggle with that aspect of actually figuring out what else do I need to do the things that I want to do. Chris, if you're going to travel, that looks different than when I travel or when Dad travels or whatever, right? So I think it's important to really kind of hone in on, okay, hey, maybe I do want to go take a European cruise next year, or maybe I want to do, just go down to Virginia Beach for the weekend. I mean, those bills are going to look completely different. Although I don't know, depending on what weekend you go down there on Labor Day or Memorial Day, it might end up being the same. But you've got to factor that in. And I think a lot of people try to de-risk their portfolio by switching over to bonds as they approach retirement. And there's no safety net there. So I think it's very important to get that professional advice and say, hey, this is what I've done. I had this conversation one night this week, and, we started bringing up the word annuity, which of course everybody's told that we're not supposed to like annuities. And she goes, well, why did you come up with this for some of the portfolio? And we kind of went through this, and she goes, well, it's interesting because we've always been told not to use this vehicle, but then you're bringing it up and you're bringing up the pros and the cons. And there's a lot more pros at this time than there are cons. And it's like, well, sure, because you're getting closer to retirement. If you were 20 years old, once again, we talk about 20-year-olds quite a bit on the show. But if you're 20 years old, we're not going to be talking about the same type of strategy. So that's why, a lot of people do it themselves when it comes to their overall accumulation of their wealth. And a lot of people have done a really good job, but it's a completely different situation once you get into retirement.
You guys reminded me, talking about, in your 20s and things like that. When I was in college, I went to the University of Georgia, the Georgia-Florida game every year down in Jacksonville. We would drive down there, 3 or 4 of us, packed in my car, my Chevy Cavalier. And we got down there and, and it worked. It worked for us because when we were 19, 20, 21, that was fine. Now, if you took those same people and we were traveling down there, first of all, we're not all going to be in the same car. We're probably going to fly down there. The vehicle changes and the vehicle per person is going to change. It's the same sort of thing when it comes to retirement. The strategies that you were using when you were in your 20s and your 30s may not necessarily be what you want to use. As you get closer and closer to retirement, you maybe do want a bit more stability, a bit more, instead of worrying about the ROI, the return on investment, you want to worry about the ROI, the reliability of income. And so finding that, bonds are a tool. Annuities are a tool. All these different strategies are tools. Is it going to be right for what you want to achieve? Well, it depends on the project. And Ralph and Tim, the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, will sit down with you, have that conversation, and really zero in and find what's going to work in your favor, what's going to work optimally for you, present that to you, and then let you make the decision based on that data. But it all begins with a phone call and having that conversation, complimentary, might I add, 804-635-3550, 804-635-3550. You can also go online, schedule a time, find out more about the First Friday events, how to attend those on the website. That is at welcomehomefp.com. While everyone's retirement is going to be different, there is a pretty common thread throughout all of it, and that is the fear of running out of money. It's the same every year, the same number one fear, which produces a new problem. Even though people have saved well, we don't spend our money, and therefore we don't get to enjoy our retirement like we should because we want to make sure that we've got enough for however long we're going to be here. Do you see this with your clients? And if so, how do you help them overcome this?
Well, I think most people do have some sort of fears when it gets to retirement. I know one of the biggest things is people are fearful of running out of money, right? And that's a real thing. I mean, you've heard horror stories, whether it's family members, friends, colleagues, what have you. And one of the worst things that you can do is walk into retirement unprepared because you didn't want to take any type of action. And then 5 years go by, you made the wrong moves, and now you have to go back to work full-time or part-time just to survive, right? Because you got to think about it. I know Dad says it, and of course, Chris, you and I are too young to understand this, but as we get older, our health is going to decline. And, if you're 80 years old and now you have to go back to work, odds are you're probably not in the best shape. I know a lot of the quote unquote retirement jobs that people take a look at around here is, working part-time at Lowe's or Home Depot or maybe Walmart. Well, guess what? Walking around them concrete floors at 80 years old is going to get old really quick. So I think it's very important, you need to address the fears that you have. And one of the things that a lot of people talk to us about nowadays is, health insurance and medical costs, because it's a real thing. Insurance has skyrocketed, whether it's health insurance or car insurance or whatever. You really got to focus in on how are you going to pay for those things. But like we talked about earlier, is once you get into retirement, it's not just about paying your expenses anymore. It's always doing the things that you've dreamt of for so long. You just didn't have the time or maybe even the funds to do so. So I think it's really important that people take action and they sit down with a professional and figure out, what their budget's going to look like, what their fund budget's going to look like, and then figure out how to pay for those things.
And I would say a lot of clients will come in when we start thinking about retiring and say, this is kind of a scary thought because we've never done this before. I'm like, yeah, most people don't retire but one time in their life.
Right.
And it is a scary thought because now you got to produce your own paycheck. And what do I mean by that? You relied for 25 to 40 years on your employer. You're going to receive X dollars every 2 weeks or every month, depending on how you get paid. And you never had to worry about it. You just want to make sure you kept your job. But now it's up to you as to what you make and how well you saved in your 401ks, your TSP, whatever it is. Think about it this way. The number of people over the last 6 months in this area that had worked for the government thought they had a job for the remainder of their life, and all of a sudden something threw a little kink in their plans because now they're told that they no longer have a job and they got to figure this out. So that is a scary thought. And as fiduciaries, that's one of the things that we sit down and talk to people about. You got to get prepared for whatever happens. And it's in your best interest to understand what you need. And going through our roadmap process is probably the first time most people's ever sat down with a budget or thought about what are my expenses? Can I reduce this? Or what's my income going to be like in retirement? Where's it coming from? Those are all things that we sit down and go through so they can understand it. But it's not just about paying bills like Tim says. It's about how do you envision your retirement? You have to have a plan, I don't believe most of us want to retire from life when we retire. We just want to retire from the work that we've been doing now for the last 25 or 30 years. And I think a lot of people, when they start thinking about taking money out of their retirement accounts, no matter whether it's IRAs, 401ks or whatever, they think that's something that they're going to deplete their lump sum. Now you got to think about it just more or less a systematic distribution of giving you a paycheck. So it's a different thought pattern. It's doing the same thing, but it's a lot more positive, in my opinion. You're not going to deplete your 401ks or your IRAs if you do it properly. You just need some help maybe getting there. The other thing you need to make sure of is, guess what? You need to make sure that you have enough cash set aside for emergency, liquid, whatever it might be, that in case something did happen, guess what? You got the money there. You don't care what the market does. If the market's down, you know that you got expenses for the next 6 months or year or whatever you decide it is that you're comfortable with. And that's the thing that, all these gurus will tell you this and this and that and this. It's always based on you. Can you sleep at night having 3 to 4 months of expenses, or do you need, like I had one client that came in and said she's very upset at herself because her emergency fund wasn't what she thought it needed to be. And I said, well, what do you think it needs to be? And she goes, $500,000. I'm like, $500,000 in liquid funds? What are you planning on doing?
Wow.
And I said, the second thing is, how much do you have right now? And she goes, I got $496,000 in the bank. I'm like, and you're worried because you're not an extra $4,000? Everybody's different. You need to determine what is best for you. What can you sleep at night with? And envision what your retirement is going to look like for you and your spouse. If you have one, or your significant other, it's up to you. Nobody else, not Chris, not Tim, not me. It's you. We help you get there. We help drive you to where you want to go, but we're not going to say this is where you have to go, because Tim wants to play golf 7 days a week when he's retiring. I don't. So everybody's going to be a little different. Would you not agree with that, Tim?
8 days a week.
8 days. Okay.
We're going to find that extra day. That's a whole other conversation we'll work on later on. But, the retirement roadmap process that the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners creates with you, not necessarily for you, but along with you, it recognizes the fact that everyone is starting in a different position, and everyone, their end goal is obviously retirement and getting to, through, and beyond retirement. That's going to look different for everyone out there. So it is a customized roadmap, just like when you're planning an actual trip. If you're starting in different locations, if you and your cousins are going to meet up, in Washington for whatever reason, and you're certainly much closer. But if your cousin lives in Tennessee or Kentucky or on the West Coast, obviously that trip is going to look a little bit different. But having a customized plan to get you there is really what it's all about. Not just to get to retirement, but to hopefully stay retired. And as you guys both said, most people, they've only done this, or they're going to be doing this only one time in their life. They've never had any experience doing it. So why not turn to a team like Ralph Short, like Tim Short, like the entire team at Welcome Home Financial Partners that has been helping countless people here in the Richmond area and beyond get retired, stay retired. It all begins with that conversation, complimentary conversation, begin that retirement roadmap process, 804-635-3550. You can also schedule a time on the website, and that is welcomehomefp.com. It is football season. We won't talk collegiate here in town, I understand. But as you're watching NFL action this weekend, I want you to think about this. The players, obviously, as a team, the focus is on winning the championship. But individually, they're also trying to secure a pension. Here's Isaac Rochelle, who retired recently after playing with the Chargers, the Colts, the Browns, and the Raiders.
To qualify for those benefits, you have to play 3 games or more per season, and I did that for 7 seasons straight. What does that actually look like? That means that essentially I'm going to make $700 to $1,000 per season, per year when I turn 55. So you can do the math, 7 years, let's call it like $6,000 to $7,000 a month is what I'll get for my pension when I'm 55. Now, you don't get these unless you do at least 3 years. So you can't get it if you play 1 year in the NFL. You don't immediately get pension. You have to make it to 3, and I got 7.
So there's a lot of rules and stipulations there for NFL players to receive their pensions. But here's the thing. What if it's the NFL or anywhere? Very few companies are offering pensions anymore. So how can we replicate that? How can we put a pension-like income in our retirement plan when we talk so much about the importance of guaranteed income?
Well, there are different ways of doing it, but I am going to pivot and disagree with you for a quick second because I have to ask you a question, Bulldog.
Okay.
What'd you think about the game 2 weekends ago against Tennessee?
It was, I knew it was going to be close. I'm obviously happy with the outcome. I wish we would have less games go into overtime than we do, but a win is a win, and I'll take it.
Yeah, I hope all the Georgia players went over and hugged Tennessee's kicker because that's one of the most brutal field goal attempts I've seen in quite some time.
Very much so.
And the fact that when they actually panned over to Tennessee's sideline and some of them were putting their arms up like it was good, I was like, what in the hell are you guys looking at? I'm surprised that even stayed in the stadium. But anyway, all right, let's go back to the NFL and their pensions. So, of course, I'm going to have to talk about my Washington Commanders here for a second as well. But I think there are a lot of stipulations, and I do find it kind of strange that the stipulations are so low when it comes to them qualifying for their pension. I mean, if you're playing 3 games out of 17, I mean, can we talk about being super part-time? So I know a lot's going to come into that, right? But there's not a whole lot of companies anymore that give pension, I shouldn't say give pensions out, but qualify for you actually receiving a pension. Especially around here, Philip Morris and Altria, they were always really good for their pension. And there's some people still working there that are grandfathered in. But, any of the new hires, and I can't remember what year that they changed that up, but they're only focusing on the 401k now. And that's where a lot of companies have pivoted. Instead of actually having the pension program, it's going to be maybe dumping a little bit more into the 401k. But in essence, when that happens is that worker is now more responsible for their retirement, right? Whereas it used to be, if you worked at a company for 20, 30, 40 years, you retire, you're going to receive a pension depending on, different criteria, just like the NFL. But I don't think it's going to be quite as less. Now, don't get me wrong. They put their bodies on the line. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. So I get it. But I think, a lot of people nowadays, if you look at the military, I know the military, some of those branches don't even get pensions anymore if you get into it at this point. And it's more focusing on the TSP and that type of thing. So it's really important that you get the proper advice, because if you go 30 years in whatever company and now, you weren't doing good at investing or savings, well, what else are you going to rely on? Social Security? It's not a great strategy. So I think it's very important to take the initiative, take the action, because if you work for 30 years and now you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, hey, I got $200,000 saved up, but my expenses are 10 grand a month. Well, odds are things probably won't work out the way that you want them to work out.
And I would say also, even if you did qualify for a pension these days, there's so much that you have to figure out when you sit there and try to determine what your pension's going to be, because you have so many different options and most people never been exposed to that before. So if you have a pension and you're fixing to retire, you probably need some help in determining what it is that you should choose for yourself as far as which option. And there's so many different things to look at, but most people at this point in stage that are workers probably will not receive a pension. Some of the companies are thinking about going back, but I doubt seriously if most of them, because the reason that they're switching to 401ks, they don't want that financial responsibility and burden for an undetermined amount of time, because you just don't know how long you're going to live. So that's why it's very important to figure out what kind of money that you do need to live and have the lifestyle that you want, and then more or less backtrack and say, all right, this is what I need. So how am I going to get it? Because that's the key to everything, is how are you going to get it? How are you going to distribute the amount of money, no matter what it is that you've got, to get the things that you need and want? And that's what it comes into play with our roadmap, saying, here's what you're going to need. This is what you're wanting to do. And now where are you getting from? If you've got Social Security, that's great. If we don't know what it's going to be like whenever we retire, it may be the same as we understand now. I don't know if it'll be that way, but you just kind of need to figure that out. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, what's going that to be? And at the same time, are you short? Is there a shortfall in your income plan? Because that's what it's all about. It's not about how much money you have set aside. It's about your income plan, because guess what? That's what you live off of, not that lump sum. It's your paycheck. How are you going to get that paycheck? And do you want to guarantee, or you just want to say, hey, I'm pretty sure that this is what it's going to be? Or you want to say, stick your head in the sand and say, I don't know what it's going to be. I just know I got this amount of money because somebody on the internet told me this is what I needed. It's always dependent on you and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too about, the companies don't want that financial responsibility anymore. I mean, we've seen over the past 3 to 5 years, so many companies are offering pension buyouts. And a lot of people don't necessarily know what to do, and they've on a very short clock, right? So it's like, oh, well, hey, here's your letter. In 30 days, we need an answer. Well, a lot of people don't know what to do. And that's where we've helped out a lot of folks of, okay, hey, these are what things look like. This would probably be the better option for you. But I think it's important that, you really focus in on how you claim that pension. There's a lot of people that make the wrong decision, and God forbid something happens to them prematurely and maybe their spouse doesn't receive anything. And that was probably what they were relying on mostly for their retirement.
And I would say this, Chris, to a lot of people, they need to understand there are ways that you can create your own private pension. It's just you need to investigate what it is that you need and talk to the fiduciaries like us that we can help prepare you for your retirement, allow you to have that income that you don't have to really worry about, or you know where it's coming from. But these are choices that you get to make, not us. It's you. And you make the final determination. We make suggestions. We give you options. And at that point in time, you decide. I know there are some advisors out there that will slide the paper across the desk from you and say, please sign here. And you have no idea what you're supposed to sign or what you're signing. So always be prepared, understand what it is that you're about to do.
We mentioned that, Ralph and Tim Short, they are fiduciaries every show, I think, but we don't really explain what that means in every show. So I want to go and take a little time right now. It means acting in the client's best interest. It's a legal obligation. They hold themselves to a standard to act in the client's best interest, which means sometimes telling you things you may not want to hear, but you need to hear if it's going to be in your best interest in the long run. Advising you, hey, if you make these withdrawals, understand the tax ramifications. This is what it's going to look like. It's not fun news to hear that, it's going to cost you more money, but it's important that you hear these things. But also, when they educate, when they present this information, it is still, at the end of the day, up to you to take that advice one way or another. But yeah, they don't slide it across the door and say, or slide it across the desk and say, please sign this without explaining it. They don't lock the door and say you can't leave until you sign it. It is literally acting in your best interest, because at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want the retirement that's going to work best for you. So why not have all the cards there on the table and be informed about it? That's what Ralph and Tim do. That's the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. They help create and maintain these retirement plans to get you to, through, and beyond retirement. So perhaps you don't have the luxury of a pension. Perhaps you only did 2 years in the NFL and you want to figure out a way to replicate that pension-like income. It's a conversation worth having. And again, as we said earlier, with bonds, with annuities, they are tools that can work. It really depends on the project you're trying to achieve, and a lot of moving parts. But it's one of those things where you haven't retired before, and it can seem daunting. You don't have to go it alone. Ralph Short, Tim Short, they're here for you, and they're as easy to reach as a simple phone call, 804-635-3550, or going online to the website, and that is at welcomehomefp.com. As always, we want to thank you for joining us here on the show, spending some time with us here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Hope you stay safe out there. Ralph, Tim, always a pleasure. Enjoy the time. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with the final word.
Thank you, Chris. And I need to circle back to my Commanders here for a second, because I sure hope old JD5 plays today. But, we talked about the NFL pension and everything else. And I think it's important to really start focusing in on, another football analogy we talk about quite a bit is the retirement red zone, right? So as we're approaching retirement, if we're within that 20 yards, we want to make sure that we are going to be ready to go. We need to make sure we've got the right plays called. So pick up the phone, give us a call. We'd love to bring you into the office, and we'll create that retirement roadmap just for you. But we want to thank you guys for listening. Go Commanders, and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness, and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.